Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And here, once again, we're in the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society, Studio One, and I am very, very pleased to welcome a great musician, great friend, Mr. Erik Schonher.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Great. I'm great. I'm great. Also, I'm greater that you're here. Yeah. So, Erik and I know each other through the association community, the American Society of Association Executives, and we had a couple of interesting sessions that we did together. We could talk about later.
They were your ideas, so I'll let you introduce them.
Oh, well, you're the implementer. But I would like to get started really just asking you a little bit about, when music kind of came into your life. I don't know if that's a funny way to say it, but, was there music in your house? Did your parents play music? Did they listen to music? Did you start off young taking lessons? Did you not get bit by the bass until later, or how did it happen?
Just to clarify for everybody, I'm a bass player, so it's not like I have a bass out there biting me all the time. That's a great question, Jeff. I'm very fortunate that I grew up with music in my life. My mother played piano, and she would sit there and she had her Methodist hymnal, and she would run through it, and you'd hear her go. And she'd be da 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 da. Damn it! Da 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 da. Damn.
That's how I practice.
Well, but I thought it was even funnier because it's a Methodist hymnal. So.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, and my grandfather actually played bass, and played an upright, big old blonde K bass, and he had played with God, what was his name? Something Penny, Red Nichols and the Five Pennies. He was actually a bass player for Red Nichols and the Five Pennies, and what they were it was one of those Jimmy Dorsey 40s group, and he sat in with them when he was in the Army, and they would do a tour. They'd have Hobie Bates come along with them.
Jeez.
And he was a good stand-up bass player, and he didn't read a lick of music, but any instrument he could play. So there was.
Where did he come from? Where did he?
Upstate New York, a place called Ellenville.
Okay.
And in Monticello, that area, if anybody out there knows it, it's about, I don't know, maybe 100 miles from New York City, straight up 95. And he was a pretty interesting guy and a lot of respect, and I had a lot of admiration for him, and he was playing music. And one of the great things, and you asked earlier, how did it come into my life? I was so very, very fortunate because they had a place on a small lake. It was Lake Wanasink, and their place went right down to the water, but it was a community. And what would happen is on Saturday nights, everybody on that side of the lake would all congregate at one of the larger houses, and guys would bring their banjos. My grandfather also played banjo and guitar.
Wow. And
they would bring their banjos and they would bring their guitars, and you would get about 50 people singing "You Are My Sunshine," singing "I've Been Working on the Railroad," and we did that. That was a Saturday night that I grew up with.
So that was your grandfather's place, and that was in New York.
Yeah, exactly right.
In the 50s, 60s.
Yeah, early 60s, late 50s. Yeah. So that's where I think music became part for me, and for a lot of musicians out there, for anybody out there, really, I'm ADD. So I have got a lot of things going on all the time, and I'm kind of like that little robot going data, input. And because obviously one thing alone is just not going to keep my attention, and that was the wonderful thing about music, because when we were playing, you could hear somebody sing really well, and you'd hear somebody sing maybe not so good, but they were giving it all their heart, man. They were giving it all their heart, and you'd hear the guitar, or you'd hear the bass, but you could bounce around, and that's interestingly enough, and I'm just discovering this as I talk to you, as a matter of fact, as I think about this, I think that was one of the first, maybe the primary reason I took that step from saying, hey, that's nice, to I really want to learn about that. I really want that to be part of me. And from then on, I ended up playing piano, and I ended up taking lessons on percussion and a couple of brass instruments, ended up studying music at college.
How young were you when you first started playing an instrument? Which one was it?
7th grade. Well, I shouldn't say that. No, I was in 4th grade. And my parents wanted me to play trumpet, which was probably not the right instrument for me. But my father played trumpet, so I had to play trumpet.
There you go.
And forget talent, forget inclination. It was trumpet.
Right.
And I could play, God, what is that? The bumblebee from the Green Hornet.
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
got that. And that was it.
Did you take lessons?
Yeah, in school. I was fortunate. My school, in elementary school, back then you had band, you had all of that. And I was taking lessons there. And it just didn't keep my interest. So then I went over to drums, banged around a little bit on some sticks. My parents, they said, you're not interested in that. Then I got a guitar. And I started taking lessons from a guy named Bruno.
So was that about 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade?
That's 7th grade.
7th grade.
Very good. Yeah, it was about 7th grade. And I suddenly discovered that I also had a voice. I could sing. Somewhat sing. At least I liked it. So, and as I got older, it seemed the girls liked it too. So that was okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But it challenged me, these 6 strings and what to do with them.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
Yeah, you're a guitar player, so yeah, I know.
I'm working on it. It's not easy.
No, we're always all working on it. That's the thing. That's
true.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yep.
Right? You never quite ever have it.
Yep. You're always working on it.
Absolutely. Sort of like Maslow right there in its own right.
So you played guitar. You took some lessons in guitar?
I did. As a matter of fact, I ended up taking classical guitar. And I got pretty good. And at the same time, I was taking bass. And it was folk guitar from Bruno up until about 9th grade, 10th grade. And then my parents looked at me and went, well, what do you want to do with your life? And of course, that's a great question for a 14-year-old or 15-year-old. Sure, I know exactly what I want. I'm 60 now, and God knows what I'm going to do tomorrow.
I hear you.
So I said, well, I think I want it to be part of music. And my mother looked at me and went, well, yeah, at least you can do that. It was
Thank goodness.
Wow, there's a lot of hope there. Thanks, Ma.
Yeah.
My father looked at me and went, well, music's a great hobby. What are you going to do for a living?
Right, I know. This is a question I wish we could change, but...
It's a weird question, but it's very, of course, you know what? It's the 60s and it's the 70s.
Well, that's what people assume now, too.
Yeah,
you can't play music unless you become a rock and roll star. Anyway,
right,
so
yeah.
Say you get in high school, you were in bands probably, you in college.
Sure, did. I played garage bands. I'm still playing garage bands. And got to college, I was a music major. Really, I was a music therapy major.
Wow.
And this goes back to the days in the 70s. There was a big turmoil in the world of special ed. And Geraldo Rivera led that charge back then with the atrocities that were going on in certain areas or certain facilities in Long Island. And a lot of laws came out, one of them being PL 94-142, which was...
a New York state law.
Correct.
Okay.
And it was well, no, that was actually PL, it was a public law.
But the U.S.
But U.S. public, right. And it was a law that said it was about getting people out of institutions and getting them into communities.
Right.
And I was of that timber, if you will, that ilk, to say, hey, I want to give back. I want to use my music to provide something more than simple listening pleasure.
Well, that's pretty cool, I have to say.
It is. Music therapy was very cool, and I'm glad to see that there's a certain level of resurgence in it, and a much stronger belief in it now, given some scientific backup that it's got.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of research, and there's an association.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. There were two, and I was a member of the one that's no longer
Really?
around. Yeah, the National Association of Music Therapists. And I went through an internship. I worked at a couple of different institutions, and these are large residential facilities. They would house thousands of residents. And now both of those institutions are closed, and it was a great time in my life. I recently went back and visited one of the facilities. It was really very interesting to see the cottages and have those flashbacks of about 40 years ago, literally 40 years ago, of working with different residents under that tree over there, or working with this one resident on that little hill over there.
So this is really, I think it's important, and something that people are realizing. We're talking about the power of music.
Yes.
But there's the Glenn Campbell movie, but he had
Yes.
Alzheimer's, Alive Inside.
Yep.
In some ways I'm kind of a neophyte, but I've been really, studying and checking a lot of things out recently. And you can see the difference practically with music with people. So could you talk a little bit about some of the people that you worked with, or the things that you saw, of how they affected people then?
Let me back it up
Sure.
just a little bit, because when I was studying, there's something known as psychomusicology. And it's a true study of music and the impact of the elements of music. And one such impact, if you will, is that back in the 70s when disco was out, they found that the syncopated rhythm, that people would actually become weaker. It disrupted their heartbeat.
Wow.
And they became weaker. And it makes perfect sense if you understand that, or you accept that people want to align themselves with their environment. And a heartbeat is boom, boom.
It's
boom,
it's the basic
boom,
beat of life,
boom, 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 boom. That's your heartbeat. And so now all of a sudden I've got to
That's freaking me out, man. What are you doing? Just stop doing that.
Okay. But how does boom, 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 boom match up with it doesn't. So what does your body do? It struggles, and it puts its energy into trying to balance itself with its environment.
Wow.
And so you become weaker because that energy is being put to that. So when I was to move forward, following psychomusicology and trying to understand how do you strengthen people? How do you use the elements of music, melody, rhythm, intonation, it goes on, tone, volume. How can you use these different elements to bring out the better side of a person, or better qualities of a person, or more talent? I worked a lot with physically handicapped. I worked a lot with male aggressives, and being 6'4" and 230 pounds, that's where the staff said, "Oh, Eric can go work with those guys."
Yeah, I hear you.
Because he's bigger than them.
Don't send Jeff over there.
Yeah, no. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would use music for any number of activities that fostered language. Music is rhythm. For me, I'm a bass player. Music is rhythm. Well, so is speech. So is movement. All of these things. One of the things I heard somebody once talk about with John Wayne, and you think of John Wayne, right? Taking San Juan Hill and riding horses and being a cowboy. Charlton Heston, when he was interviewed about John Wayne, said he'd never seen anybody who was so smooth in walking. And when you read about John Wayne and you read about his history, he worked at walking. He understood that he had to walk smoothly. So there's a lot to be said about understanding the body rhythm that you have and walking and finding a way to move forward, or in speaking, there's a certain rhythmic pattern. So working on rhythm to help with pronunciation, to help with communication skills, even basic communication skills, is a great tool. Also, you've got fine motor skills and gross motor skills. The difference being, gross motor skill would be a palmar grasp. If you grabbed a spoon with your whole hand, a palmar grasp, versus just using 2 fingers. That's a pincer grasp. That's a fine motor versus a gross motor. Well, holding an instrument, clapping. These are clapping to rhythm. These all work those muscles. So you can break music down to a variety of physical activities that will help bring out the strength, help people learn about their bodies and how to better interact with their environment.
So you really use music almost in a therapeutic, scientific way to address certain issues that people
music
have.
Therapy and psychomusicology. And of course, this doesn't even get on the whole topic of music being used in visualization, or music being used as a tool to alleviate stress, because that's a whole nother cosmos.
Well, that's getting in your car and turning up the tunes.
That's exactly right.
You don't have to have too much the PhD to know that, but what you're talking about is just so it's amazing, but it's validating in a sense for me to hear, from you. I didn't realize this was kind of part of your background.
You're really surprised at this, aren't you? I can tell. It's like, oh my God, I had no idea.
Do you remember any particular kind of examples, instances of things that...
I worked a lot with autistic kids and adults. And there's that level of connection. There's a lot of literature, obviously, on autism, some of the early stuff, Beetleheim and so forth. But in utilizing music, it's non-threatening. It can be non-threatening. It can be threatening. Depends. Yeah. But if you're going to use it in a therapeutic manner, then you're going to want this to align to you're going to play to your audience, right? And you're going to want to use all of those different elements and combine those elements in such a manner as it's going to elicit the response that you're looking for. And in the case of autism, with many of the residents I worked with, and understand, these are people that were locked away. These institutions were not nice places. It's not that they were bad. It's just simply they weren't nice.
Right.
And it's just like any other society. It ends up developing its own rules. And I saw the whole idea of institutionalization in its rawest form. I met people who had been locked up because they were juvenile offenders in the 1940s, early 50s.
Well, that would make you crazy to be locked up for that.
Well, think about it, right?
Yeah.
And what are you going to do? You're going to, if I'm in a crazy place, I have to start acting crazy, or I'm not going to survive. So now multiply that by a factor of a gazillion when you're autistic. Wow, talk about just pulling into yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
So
music, what I was able to do with music was to begin basic language skills. Hello, how are you?
You're talking about establishing connections, really.
Correct. And music was a great tool to do that, and it still is. Hey, you don't have to be autistic. Good Lord, you and I have played music, and we've connected. We've had people over at your house, and we have connected with those people. Going from a C chord to an F chord, there's a connection.
Yeah.
And we're doing it together, to produce something that is unique to that moment. And that's exciting.
When in that work that you were doing, did you play instruments to connect with people, or did you use recorded music?
No, it really depended upon the individual. If, let's say, that we were working on some level of socialization skill, right? And it required holding hands at the very most touching fingertips. Sometimes that was all you could do. Then I'm going to touch fingertips, and I'll have music and recording going on, and I'll hum, and I'll move with the rhythm. And what I'm looking for at that point is an acknowledgement that I exist in that person's world, and that can be measured by whether or not they rock, right? Or if they begin to hum, or even if they pull away drastically. Oh, I got in, didn't I? I got in there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a start. And sometimes with many of these residents, that was phenomenal. Now, yeah, then you come to the tough part of this, is that do they hold on to it? Is it retained? Well, not
Maybe
always.
yes, maybe no.
Maybe yes, maybe no. But you hope over time it gets there. And to some degree, are these folks going to go out there into the world and run for president? Well, you may have your own opinions on that one, but the bottom line is no. But I think that what's the word? I think that the intent of a law like PL 94-142 was to say, look, it's instead of looking at it as a public law, it's a humanist law. It's a humanistic law. It's saying people need to connect. People need to have hobbies. People need to have art in their lives. People need to have people in their lives. This is the social condition. And it was a good law in that regard to say we recognize that these people who have been locked away, these people who in some cases are outcasts and in other cases are just too unruly to be in an open society, well, they're people. They're people. And we need to acknowledge that and allocate or dedicate the resources necessary to help bring out the humanity in them as much as is possible.
Yeah, I believe that. One of the a friend of mine, Steve Little, guitar player, I interviewed him, and his podcast is up. He part of his job is playing guitar at retirement homes.
Precisely.
And he had a program, which I hope to have him back on the show sometime and talk about it, called Dementia Melodies, which is about, music in that situation.
Well, but that's a wonderful example of music therapy, especially as it's being applied today. It's, what other thing out there is it that you can experience by simply listening to it? You don't even have to. You actively engage in music.
The toe starts tapping.
Right. And it brings you back to a place. It reminds you of a smell. I mean, it reminds you of that time in your life that you got your first kiss, or you went out with your favorite girl, or you were out in the yard throwing a stick for your dog. It brings home all of that.
It's kind of remarkable. So let's shift gears just a little bit. I find that kind of fascinating about your background. I think we could talk about it for a longer time, and we'll have to do that. The connection that we had was this idea that, gosh, how could we get some people together at a conference, a professional conference, when they didn't have instruments, they didn't know necessarily how to play music, didn't know the lyrics to the song, didn't know anything, and get them to play a song together, create a song together.
Well, and you were the brainchild of that, or the Planetary Gig Society was the brainchild of that idea, and we've done it twice. It was a tremendous success at the first show, and I'm calling it a show. Good Lord, the first session, if you will.
Yeah.
And the second session I think was even better, was even bigger. Quite honestly, I think we had more people, and
From my perspective, we all knew that we wanted to do it, but the question is, how do you bring people together to do a song? And the answer was a melody that they know.
Exactly. Well, it's a common background, right?
We did 2 songs. I've been working on the railroad, and everybody knows that song.
Absolutely.
And then This Land Is Your Land.
Right.
And they, what we did for everybody out there in podcast land, in an hour, we got about 20, 25, 30 people together with a couple of instruments to hold down the rhythm, and we wrote the music, we got together, we performed the song.
Absolutely. Well, I think that second one is out there somewhere on YouTube also.
Yeah. As our good friend Wes Erik, he said it was quite a demonstration of collaboration, creativity, getting people together, overcoming boundaries, overcoming fears, lack of abilities in some ways. But that's what associations do.
Exactly. And that's how we tied it all together, quite honestly. We look, man is a social beast. Do I like being alone? Absolutely. I enjoy my private time. But man is still a social beast. We stand on everybody else's shoulders as people stand on our shoulders to succeed, whether it's in a wonderful community, or it's at a job, or it's going to your kid's soccer game or lacrosse game. We stand on everybody else's shoulders, and they all stand on our own. And associations are an open source, if you will, to do that. And what was interesting about what we did is, I think, for those people who were shy and were kind of, I don't know if I'm really comfortable with this, well, they could stand in the back. They didn't have to be out front.
Right.
And they would then learn a little bit about themselves and participate in creating the lyrics, or listen to somebody sing a little harmony and go, oh, maybe I can try. If they wanted a rhythm instrument, they got a rhythm instrument. And you were teaching people harmonica, for God's sakes. And for you to be able to get, 5, 6, or 7 people who'd never touched a harmonica before to play harmonica, which was really pretty cool.
Yeah, it's and there's some people out there who do that. A guy named Gary Allegretto in California, Harmonic Kids, and
Harmonic Kids.
He'll go into schools and other places and teach like 50 or more kids, 4 songs in like a half an hour.
That's amazing.
It's kind of remarkable. So I mean, we're talking around again just the amazing qualities of music, and that was it was. Those sessions that we did, you and I and Sharon, and
it was a great experience, at least from my perspective, because I was part of it, and you were kind enough to invite me into it. But everybody came there a little bit nervous. After everybody performed, everybody had that comment, and what was interesting is, I think it helps solidify some relationships. And I think that people, when they have a common background, they go through a common event, something like this, they walk away with a feeling of connection.
Yep.
That they didn't have before. Right?
Yeah, and that's what associations are trying to do. Make connections, develop community.
Yep.
And music is one way, even for associations, to be able to develop community in a way that's different than just going to a session on some
Precisely
topic.
Right. You get, hopefully from a session you get 1 or 2, and you and I both have given sessions. I've been speaking for years. I know you've been speaking for years. And I measure success if somebody can walk away and they have like 1, 2, 3 new ideas out of an hour.
Absolutely.
I measure that as being a successful session. The great thing about what I think we did, or part of what we did, is the end result is people walked away with a couple of good ideas, even just simply about themselves.
Yeah.
They tried something new. Most of them, if not 90% of them, never played in a rock band, never sat around their back porch and played music with 2, 3, 4 other people. They've never experienced that. We did. We
Yeah.
did.
And, that's part of
They did, I should say.
That's
Yeah.
part of the intention of the whole Planetary Gig Society is more community around
Yep.
music, more gigs, more openness that way.
Well, reaching out to people who don't necessarily have that in their lives, to explore new parts of themselves.
Yeah. I mean, what else better
Uh-huh.
can you do than have people achieve more connection and confidence and feel better about themselves and
Deeper understanding of themselves and everybody around them. That's
Yeah.
a great thing. That's a beautiful thing.
yeah.
I wish more people did it.
All right, so we've had a pretty good conversation here.
Yeah.
Eric, I really appreciate it. I feel like we could keep going on, but let's save up some more for the next
Absolutely.
time. Thanks very much for being here in the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society.
Thank you
Really
very much,
appreciate
Jeff.
it and sharing those parts of your life and your thoughts about music.
Fantastic. Thank you, buddy.
Yep. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.